Yeah, to the student who is encountering these kinds of arguments for the very first time, I'm sorry that we let you down all these years, first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is don't allow the newness of the argument to overwhelm you, because these arguments are not new. So many students come to me, oh, what about the Judas Gospel? You know, this is this new thing, and it's this criticism of Christianity, and maybe the story's been wrong. And it feels like this thing is brand new and all the weight's been put on their shoulders. It's not new. The church has been talking about the Judas Gospel for about 1,800 years. And you just have to tap into some of that history and some of what the church has been doing. The same is true for textual criticism. The same is true for gospel issues. What you don't want to do is you don't want to hear one position. You don't want to hear one version of the story, even though that version may be coming from someone who's very credible, and walk away thinking, well, this is what I have to think. Because that's not the way scholarship is done. And what you're going to find is you're going to find that on the issue of textual criticism, on the issue of synoptics, whatever the issue, you're going to find that there are some really competent scholars, well-credentialed, well-published scholars on the other side of the issue, who are saying just the opposite, who are saying, no, as a matter of fact, there are solutions to these alleged discrepancies among the Gospels. There are answers to what about 400,000 disagreements in the manuscript evidence. They're good answers to those sorts of things. And you've got to find those guys, and you've got to tap into them. You may not have the privilege of studying under them in college, but they're out there, and they're teaching, and they're writing books. And so you're going to have to tap into that, and you're going to have to not be kind of duped by their rhetoric into thinking that this one position, or even this majority position, is necessarily the correct position or the only position. In fact, sometimes if you watch some of the cable channels, the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, you're being duped into thinking that a very, very minority position is in fact what every New Testament scholar thinks. That's not the case at all. I would even be careful that so often these issues are painted as, well, okay, well, here's what secular, unbiased scholars think, and here's what Christian, evangelical, biased is the implication, scholars think. And I would say that's not even necessarily the case. I often like to shore up what I'm teaching my students with positions of people who might agree with me, but who would be theologically on the other side of the aisle, for example. I'll in these various venues when we're talking about the dating of the New Testament and the New Testament books, and I'll say, well, I don't know if you realize this or not, but there are some what we would call theologically liberal scholars who hold to some very early dates for the New Testament. There's a very famous scholar, J.A.T. Robinson, who believes that the entire New Testament was written prior to A.D. 70. And that's not a Bible thumping fundamentalist trying to make a point. This is a reputable scholar who has a different opinion than some other of the more secular scholars. And I think it's time that those guys got a hearing along with everybody else. It's not just the conservatives versus the liberals, the believers versus the unbelievers. There are scholars all over the place on these issues. You got to do some digging to get them because they're not always put in your face, but they're out there, and they've done some pretty fabulous work.